Good evening, friends. Welcome to Monday night at Indigo Sangha. It is lovely to see each of your faces. Hello, hello. I want to just say a smile and a greeting to everyone. And this is week 4 of our study of the discourse on the knowing the better way to catch a snake. So I am looking forward to sharing with you the last bit of the Sutra and some of the commentary by Tai. And in the theme that is tonight, which the focus is on impermanence as part of that Sutra, I'll be offering a guided meditation. And the guided meditation will be a bit longer than we usually sit. So there'll just be the one sit this evening, and then we'll enjoy some walking meditation after that. And I would like to say that this meditation is provoking. So if there's any part of this that is giving you discomfort, you have 2 options. One option is to just do your own thing and enjoy your sitting. You could turn the sound off if you'd like. The second option would be if it's really, if you find it upsetting for any reason, I would invite you to bow out and rejoin us at about 7:30. So now I'm sure I have all of your interest piqued. I will tell you that this is one of Thai's meditations, and it is an essential teaching in our practice. So we're going to go there. All right. So why don't we go ahead and find our posture. We want our feet, if we're sitting in a chair, our feet are firmly on the floor. We can feel the soles of our feet on the earth beneath us. We can feel the weight of our body in our seat. Go ahead and notice your shoulders and maybe roll them back and relaxed. And have an upright spine. Relax your hands and arms. Drop your chin. And bring a smile to your lips. We'll begin with 3 sounds of the bell. Aware of my beloved, alive and healthy, I breathe in. Smiling to my beloved, alive and healthy, I breathe out. Beloved, alive, smiling. Seeing the dead body of my beloved, I breathe in. Smiling to the dead body of my beloved, I breathe out. Seeing beloved dead, smiling. Seeing the dead body of my beloved infested with worms, I breathe in. Smiling to the dead body of my beloved infested with worms, I breathe out. Beloved's infested body, smiling. Seeing the dead body of my beloved as a white skeleton, I breathe in. Smiling to the dead body of my beloved as a white skeleton, I breathe out. Beloved's skeleton, smiling. Seeing my beloved's body being wrapped in a shroud, I breathe in. Smiling to my beloved's body being wrapped in a shroud, I breathe out. Wrapped in a shroud, smiling. Seeing my beloved's body being placed in a coffin, I breathe in. Smiling to my beloved's body being placed in a coffin, I breathe out. Placed in a coffin, smiling. Seeing my beloved's body being cremated, I breathe in. Smiling to my beloved's body being cremated, I breathe out. Cremated, smiling. Seeing my beloved's remains being mixed with the earth, I breathe in. Smiling to my beloved's remains being mixed with the earth, I breathe out. Remains mixing with earth, smiling. On this first sound of the bell, we'll rise for our walking meditation and stand behind our chairs. On the second sound, we'll bow to one another for the capacity in each of us to become a Buddha. And on the third sound of the bell, we'll begin our gentle steps. One step with the in-breath, one step with the out-breath. Or if for any reason walking is a difficulty, you may use this opportunity as another sitting meditation.
The Discourse on Knowing the Better Way to Catch a Snake, Part 4. So you'll recall when we first entered the sutra, we learned about our capacity for misunderstanding the teachings of the Dharma. And the metaphor of knowing the better way to catch a snake became important because the snake we can think of as the Dharma. And we learned how to pick up the snake so as not to get bit. You have to pick it up right behind the head. And the second evening of our study, we looked more deeply into the sutra. And we realized that that first misunderstanding we were wrestling with about sense impressions as an obstacle to our practice, sense pleasures, wasn't even what the sutra was about. The sutra was about letting go of our beliefs and our ideas, our theories, and our ideologies. And there were a number of metaphors that we discussed then. We talked about how we're on one shore and we want to get to the other shore of enlightenment. And so we can use the Dharma as a raft to carry us across to the other shore, but that we don't pick up and hold on to the Dharma. We don't even cling to that once we have gotten the teaching from it. We let it go, we leave it for others. We looked at the finger pointing to the moon, that if we focus on the finger and say, that's where the enlightenment is, then we miss the moon and we don't understand even the finger. And
The third metaphor we looked into about letting go was going on a ladder. And as we cling and hold on to the rung that we're on, we can't move up or down. The only way we can make progress is to keep releasing. Our third evening of study, we looked at some of the most common misunderstandings of the Buddha's teaching, starting with no self. And we looked at how people misunderstand this teaching as being a suggestion of annihilation or non-being. And that wasn't at all what the Buddha was saying. But we do have a habit of clinging to ourselves by taking refuge in the five skandhas: form, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness, that we really cling to those. And the teaching was really that we have to understand that in reality, there is no self, because everything is constantly changing. And this body is empty of a separate self, but full of everything else. We also learned that the Buddha never taught that we didn't exist. He says we do exist. We have a kind of existence, but it's selfless and impermanent. So, on to tonight. We kind of ended last week with the notion that the idea of the teaching is different from the insight. And I want to pick up there because we said, that the sutra is about letting go, but tonight let's go even more deep than that. The sutra is really about liberating ourselves from concepts, letting go of all of our concepts. So those would be the concepts of our sense impressions, the concept of no self, we can let go of that. The concept of impermanence, we can let go of that. The concept of nirvana, we can let go of that. Now hold on. We just learned them. We're just starting to get our heads wrapped around them. Yes. And we're going to be so light with them that we're not going to double down and grab onto them. We do, though, in the sutra, need to use words and concepts in order to communicate the insight that we're pointing ourselves towards. So the invitation in this is to go ahead and explore these teachings, again, without getting caught by them, without letting that snake bite you. So let's look at this notion of impermanence, of understanding intellectually. We can pretty much grasp the impermanent nature of things, like when we look at a cloud, or we look at the seasons, or we look at our aging bodies. It's like, I got it, things are impermanent. But the teaching is really something that we want to translate into daily action. And so this meditation that we did is really about seeing, for an example, the impermanence of our beloved. And then we can ask ourselves, how does this change our daily action? When we know that we're living in impermanence together. And when we look at translating the idea, the intellectual concept of impermanence into daily action, suddenly impermanence becomes a practice, not an idea. So we take our mindfulness and our concentration and our observation as we're moving through life, and that leads to the insight, the true understanding of impermanence. So the practice of impermanence leads to the insight that actually liberates us from our wrong perceptions, our wrong understanding. I'll give you an example of this. Many of you may have, who have been fortunate enough to be in a long relationship, may have experienced at some point in that relationship a certain staleness. I will say that I did at one point. And I thought at that point that I knew everything about my husband. You know, we had been together a long time. I had his number. I knew who he was. But Ty gave a teaching once that I heard, which was about the way that scientists can spend an entire career looking at a single atom and the mystery of that and the beauty of that. And I realized that this problem of staleness was probably mine, that I didn't have much curiosity. And then I was thinking about these meditations I was doing about, you know, bodies decaying and things like that. And I saw my beloved's foot once while he was asleep, and it was hanging out of the covers. And I looked at that foot and I realized that he has a very high arch, and so he has a problem fitting his shoes. And suddenly I was like really overcome with compassion. That here this little boy, this child, this young man, this working adult that had to be on his feet all day, had a problem with fitting his shoes properly. And it was just such a small thing. But it opened up this sense of compassion. And then the third thing that happened was the meditation on the decaying of a beloved. I could see in that foot, you know, it's kind of pale. And I thought, oh, it's impermanent. It won't be here forever. And suddenly, the preciousness of this moment was so fleeting. And I had truly the insight of impermanence that was a gift of this moment. And I know it was an insight and not just an idea, because it transformed me and that relationship forever. And it was immediate. You know, you say, how long does it take you to become enlightened? It doesn't take any time at all. And it takes forever. But as soon as you are, it's like you're there. So insight is a gift that we get that actually transforms the situation. And it liberates us from our wrong perceptions, not in a way that we reason ourselves to, but in a way where, like, the penny drops, boom, and everything is different. I'll give you another example of playing with this awareness of impermanence, and that is babysitting our grandchildren. Now, children are a wonderful way to look deeply into impermanence. Every time they show up at our house, once a month, once every couple of months, they are different people getting out of the car. You know how young children change so quickly. So there's that aspect. But then as we play together all day, there is a constant evolution and flow of emotion, interests, movement, bodily needs, ideas. And it's like you're just going from one to another because they're so fluid. They're so interested in the world. Everything is new. And their ideas are just a fountain. And so it gives a very much alive sense of the impermanence of this moment. Another thing that came up for me when I was thinking about impermanence of beloveds is having dinner with my father, who is suffering from Alzheimer's. I know my dad. I know who my dad has been, you know, through my childhood and my adulthood. Yes, he's evolved as a person, but there's a lot of evolution going on now. And when I show up to this moment, it's a little bit different than the previous one. And so paying attention and being open to the impermanence of now helps me know how to be with what his needs are in this moment. It's a form of a concentration, if you will, that leads to the insight of me knowing how to be and what to do. And I know many of you in our group here are gardeners. And I think that anybody who buys plants that they put in the ground in the summer, they know they're not going to be here in the winter. There is impermanence. But it isn't until you're actually a gardener that you understand the nature of impermanence in nature. And you have living insight into the ebb and the flow and the planting and the pulling and the feeding and the pruning. It's something that you can't even convey to someone who doesn't garden. The diligence and the relationship and the continuation of the garden from one phase to the next. So impermanence is a practice. And it is a practice that applies to all things when we look. Our bodies, our material possessions, our clothes, our cars, our food, our financial resources, our houses. All of these things are like going through their own cycles. The cycles of praise and blame that we have in our life. Oh, you're great. Oh, I can't believe how stupid you are. All of the different things that come upon us. If we own one, then we own the other. If we don't own one, it's like, oh, I'm not going to take the praise because I'm not taking the blame. Well, then there's a little bit of a middle path there, right? But there's constantly these cycles that are going. Emotions, even those emotions that are so deeply embedded in perhaps wounds of our childhood, they are not permanent. We can transform them and have a different relationship with them. Of course, our relationships with our friends and loved ones evolve as well. So all of these things we can begin to look at and see the impermanence of them. One of the Japanese Zen masters, and I'm sorry I don't know which one, he is famous for having this teacup that he treasured. He says, look at this teacup. I love this teacup. I love the way it's glazed. It's just the right size. And because of its material, it keeps my tea very hot. He says, I love it so much that I see it already broken. There's a lot of insight in that. Seeing the cup already broken. It's a practice. And that same notion of seeing it already broken is actually what brings me so much stability when I look at earth holding and protecting, when I look at the challenge of the climate crisis and environmental degradation. I take it all the way to the end where the earth is uninhabitable. And I grieve that. And then I can come back here today and go, but not yet. It's beautiful. There's still hope. It helps me identify the skillful means. And it helps me refrain from harm. And it helps me have no regrets. When I can see it's already broken, I live like there's no regrets. Because the insight helps us take care of the future by taking care of the present. When we take care of the present really well, we are taking care of the future. And so understanding what can happen, the loss, the impermanence of now, it helps us take care of now. It relieves us from the attachment that we have to things being this way. The clinging, the victimization of why me when it changes. Well, because it helps us get more enjoyment out of being alive. And it also relaxes our desire for more. You know, if we're feeling vulnerable, oh, I might lose this, we start to cling and hoard and hold on and collect. Well, when we know that, yes, we might lose this, to relax and enjoy what we have, it helps us keep from the hunger, keep feeding that hunger for more security, because we realize security is an illusion. So impermanence is the reality from the point of view of time, and no self, the fact that there's all of this interbeing, is the reality from the point of view of space. So no self, this flux of space, is the same thing as impermanence, this flux of time. And time is with space. So we can kind of see this on a spiritual level, but of course Einstein proved this, right? He mathematically decoded the relationship of space-time. And I heard a presentation by Stephen Hawking once that said it's not space and time, it's space-time with a hyphen. It's one word, space-time, because you can't have one without the other, they interarm. So let me just say that if any of this is exhausting to you or a little overwhelming, or it's like, you know, too much, I just want you to invite you for a minute to consider that maybe that's your mind really wanting this to be clear and trying to cling to the pieces of it. And as I'm describing this, again, we're trying to let go of the concepts. So they're words and concepts, but they're going to be kind of bouncing off each other. So I encourage you, as you're listening to this, to just continue to relax and let these teachings come in like Dharma rain and just soak into the soil of your awareness. You don't actually have to get it all now, because again, it's not something we're going to grab and keep. But just allow it to penetrate, and it'll be there for you when you need it. And with that, let's talk about nirvana. Okay, nirvana. We don't talk about nirvana much, do we? But we've all heard about it. And the word nirvana means extinction. So this is another one of those ideas that can be really easily misunderstood of the Buddha's teaching, because again, extinction, oh, that means annihilation, here we go again. But no, it means extinction of afflictions and suffering, extinction of hatred, extinction of all the ideas of existence and non-existence, birth and death. It means extinction of the ideas of self. It even means the extinction of the ideas of the middle way. It's just releasing the concepts deeply. Existence continues, whether you're releasing the concepts or not. Existence is doing what it does. But when we release the ideas, we're not caught in the words. So nirvana is this extinction of all of these things that we cling to, that we think define our lives, or that we think define reality. So we can think of nirvana like we think of impermanence, that it is also a practice. And it is not an idea. So we can have this idea, okay, nirvana is extinction of all ideas. I got that intellectually, but I don't quite have the insight yet. And that's because you have to practice your way there. You have to concentrate on letting go of theories. on looking deeply into the reality of no self and impermanence, on transforming anything that you feel caught by, that notion of self, I, me, my, and really practice dwelling in the present moment. I'm going to read with you an excerpt of what is in the Sutra, and then some of Thay's commentary afterwards. The Sutra says, if when he considers the 6 bases for wrong views, a bhikshu does not give rise to the idea of I or mine, he is not caught in the chains of this life. Since he is not caught in the chains of this life, he has no fear. To have no fear is to arrive at nirvana. Such a person is no longer troubled by birth and death. The holy life has been lived. What needs to be done has been done. There will be no further births or deaths, and the truth of things as they are is known. So Thay breaks it down a little bit. He says, here, nirvana is defined as to have realized in practice the teachings of no self. The holy life has been lived. What needs to have been done has been done. Nirvana is defined in a second way, to arrive at right understanding. The truth of things as they are is known. The third way that nirvana is defined, he points out, is to be able to put an end to the cycle of birth and death. Such a person is no longer troubled by birth and death. And then the fourth definition of nirvana, Thay points out, is to have no fear. He has no fear. So one who abides in nirvana is referred to as the Tathagata. Tathagata. This person who abides as a Tathagata does not come or go anywhere. They don't come from anywhere or go anywhere. They are described as a noble fount of freshness and coolness. And there is no heat or sorrow in this state. They embody joy, peace, freedom, and happiness. So I think back to the opening of this sutra, when Arata was brought to the Buddha, and the Buddha said, oh, you slander me. Now, did he say, oh, you slander me? Or was he this fount of freshness and coolness without heat that was just speaking with joy and peace and freedom? When I hear it that way, it's like it's a little bit of a different story. Nobody was being reactive or plugged in, It was just, this is what's going on. So there is a sutra called the Mahaparinirvana Sutra that says there are 4 characteristics of nirvana. Those 4 characteristics are permanence, joy, sovereignty, and purity. Now, there's other sutras that say permanence, joy, sovereignty, and purity are the 4 basic wrong perceptions. They actually call them the 4 perverted views. So hold on here. We've got, on the one hand, we've got these 4 qualities being perverted views, and on the other hand, we got to know these define nirvana. So what's up with that? Well, same teaching used with 2 opposite meanings intentionally. And in the instance of the Mahaparinirvana Sutra, it heals the ideas of nothingness. It's like an antidote to the snake bite, the way that it's offered. So what's happening in these teachings is that they're not ambiguous, but they are context specific. They're not ambiguous, but they're context specific. And this is why it is so helpful to have a Sangha do deep looking together, to look at the applications of these teachings, to know when and how they can be applied and should be applied to this particular moment, and why the present moment practice is so critical. Not ideas about, well, 2 years ago when we did this. No, what is now? What is needed now? So I heard a 10-year-old girl once, she was invited up to ask Thich Nhat Hanh a question. And her question was, Dear Thai, is abortion right or wrong? And the whole room kind of fell silent. There was a little bit of a gasp. Everyone's like, oh. And Thai's answer said that it was very important to look deeply at the situation with family and friends. That they collectively needed to look at the world in which this child was being born into. They needed to look at the life of the mother and the life of the child. And only then would the community, the beloved community, know best how to protect life. Context specific. No absolute truths. It is because the teachings of the Buddha are so incredibly deep, and because they are rooted in this reality of no self and impermanence, that they are so easily misunderstood. And the Buddha said that in the Mahayana tradition, it's one of the things that is often quoted. The Buddha said that in 45 years, I have never said anything. Meaning, please do not get caught in any of my words. That his message transcended the words. I have never said anything. If we are caught in views and notions and words, we lose the true teaching. So this sutra is a bell of mindfulness for us to be careful, to be attentive, to be open to the teachings. And we need to understand them and apply them to daily life, because that's where they begin to make sense, is in their application, to transform ourselves and others, to be helpful, so that we can, and those around us can realize peace and freedom and enlightenment. And it's only in the application, the practice of them, where they have their value. So we use them to correct our wrong impressions, so we realize liberation. Our non-attachment to views is a peace practice. Our non-attachment to views is a peace practice. We release views so that we gain insight. It's like the scientific method. You know, we have a hypothesis. We try it out, and then we learn. And then we try that out, and we learn. And incrementally, we can transform. So Buddhism is not a philosophy or a description of reality. It's a set of devices, if you will, tools that we use. Skillful means of practice leading to insight, releasing us from afflictions. And one last metaphor to use for you. The teachings are like a match. Insight is the flame. And it's only when we properly use the teaching, properly use the match, that we ignite the flame and it devours the match. So thank you very much for your willingness to delve into the sutra. I have had a lot of fun with this. I hope you have as well. I will turn off the recording and open up the floor for Dharma sharing. And you may feel free to bow in and offer to the community anything that is alive for you about this evening's presentation or any of the other studying that we've been doing. Thank you.